I think you ought to know. Do-do-what-it-up, Men's Radio. Do-do-what-it-up, the place where men and women really speak. Do-do-what, do-do-do-what. Oh man, what a show. Do-do-what-it-up. It's Men's Radio. Do-do-what-it-up. This crazy show is on 3 times a week. Do-do-what, do-do-do-what. Now Russ and Phil are there to help with all your cares. We laugh, we cry, we talk like grown-ups do. But if you're sad and low, it won't cost you no dough. Men's Radio, that's the place for you. With Russ Kane and Phil Dave.
It is the morning of the day after.
Yep.
As they say. I don't know where they always say that when they're trying to be profound in the media. They go, it's the morning of the day after. It's like, oh, for God's sake. Emma Webb, afternoon, all. Oh, my head. Well, it's okay. What does that mean? Veronica Curran up in Edinburgh. Hello.
Quite a lot or something. Maybe she got over.
Wazhead. Big Wazhead, Emma. And Dave Sleek, greetings one and all. It's a lot of stuff that I'd like to get through, but first, remember, this is Men's Radio. You can hear us on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. It's Men's Radio. If you're there, please press subscribe, hit the like button. That would just be fantastic for us. Forgive me for not having my normal big knobby mic thing here, but my back is still screwed and I can't bend down to it. Yeah, I know. It's great. And there we are.
The Veronica Curran's question then of how's the pain, Russ?
It's being managed by a massive amount of drugs, which is interesting. It's made me laugh. I was reading some stuff yesterday. Michael Verby, who's still out in Spain with his sister Stacey, he left Leeds and he went out. He said it's like it's like watching Lenny Bruce. It's because the opioids absolutely mess with my head. They are. Well, what can I say? Anyway, Philip's very tired today, and Phil is very tired because yesterday the fool watched the football, thinking he was going to see history made.
Well, I thought we were going to watch a moment in history, not history repeating itself. So I'm afraid I'm a bit out of it today, even more so than usual.
I'll tell you something, that me being the more mature of the two of us, of course, had a whacking great bet on Italy to win, which I did. I wanted England to win, obviously. That would have been nice. A nice little fillip, for no pun intended, for the country. But I knew they wouldn't. So I had a whacking great bet on Betfair, on my Betfair account. Boom. Thank you very much. So every cloud. Before we get into that.
To be fair, you knew that they wouldn't win. You had a feeling they wouldn't win.
Well, I knew if it came to penalties, we were never going to bloody win. As soon as I knew penalties, I was like, oh, Jesus, I just went off and made myself another cup of tea. Here's the thing. Good morning, Lenny and Phil. Interestingly, Michael Verby in Spain, I was watching a documentary, watching some old Lenny Bruce footage last night. Yeah. Some of it's very clever, and some of it you just think, the audience are laughing hysterically, but I'm not quite getting it.
My goodness me, there is some things that I would never thought sort of would be said in public, but there you go. There's quite the compliment. I've always saw one. Mark J.W. Thomas, who is the Ganzermacher of Deluxe Radio, has said, "Good afternoon, gentlemen."
Yeah.
Says, Russ, please message me after the show about taking more of your shows on Deluxe.
Yeah, I know. You and I, it's been lovely. Deluxe Radio listeners and all 65,000 plus of them seem to be loving the show. So what a treat. It's really nice. I want to get into stuff. Before we talk about that, I want to pay tribute. I had a horrible start to the weekend. I got a text from my lovely friend Joe Good, who I worked with for many years, and Phil knows extremely well, to say that John O'Coleman had died in Australia from cancer. He'd been battling cancer for 4 or 5 years. Whenever Jono was over in the UK, we got together, even if it was just a coffee. And the last time I saw him was with him and his lovely wife Margot and his daughter and Joe Good, and we all went out for dinner. I think we went to the. I know that's what we did. We went to the Ivy in St John's Wood because that was kind of convenient for everybody, apart from me, obviously. And we had the most wonderful evening, Phil. You know, we just laughed and enjoyed each other's company. And John O'Coleman, I get so upset about this. He was the most lovely man. I mean, he really was. He was, apart from being very talented, as a human being, he was delightful. He was genuinely funny. It wasn't put on. He was a genuinely funny, charming guy. A devoted family man. How rare is that? Loved his family. Was very successful, was very modest, and was just a beautiful human being. He was a lovely guy. Cancer is a complete bastard of a disease, as we all know. And I was shocked to read that he'd gone.
Well,
And
I didn't even know
it was horrible.
I didn't even know he was ill. So, I mean,
Yeah.
because I know that was actually sort of how he wanted it. He didn't go too public with it. It was public knowledge, but he didn't go too public with his cancer story because that was him. He wanted to, I suppose, deal with it in the way that anyone who's out of the limelight would want to deal with it. In other words, family, and that was the way he saw fit. I actually have to confess, I only met him, albeit briefly, once. Spoke to him a couple of times over the phone because, well, he worked at where he worked at a different era. Radio London, when I worked there, was a different era. So I spoke to him a couple of times over the phone when we were trying to get him as a potential guest, and he was always very charming, very obliging, never sort of was up himself or anything like that I ever experienced. But it was, I remember reading that because when I was awake at about 5 o'clock on the Saturday morning, as I do, and I was going through social media and saw it there. I thought, what? Don't be ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. It's always a shock. It's if you can prepare yourself a little bit, it's okay. But wow, and it's horrible. I just wanted Phil and I just wanted to pay tribute to him. I was hoping that Joe Good might pop in, but she's impossible to communicate with. She's so sweet, but she's absolutely impossible. She'll send you a message like 6 months later. Oh, did you write to me? Yeah, like 6 months ago, Joe, for Christ's sake. She's a lovely, she's such a great girl. I love Joe Good. I mean,
I messaged her as soon as I found out.
Yeah.
Afterwards, 5 o'clock on Saturday morning. And I said, I so hope this message doesn't wake you. And I so hope I'm not the person who breaks this news to you. And she messaged back and she said, don't worry, I've spoken to Margot. And I just thought.
Margot being Jono's wife, a lovely woman. And listen to this from Paul Claridge. I never met Jono, but during my own issues with cancer, he sent me a message of support. So sad to hear that he passed over the weekend. That's a lovely thing. Not that he passed, that's a bloody awful thing, but a lovely thing that he sent Paul a message. And that was you know what? It's the measure of the man, isn't it? It's the measure of the man. Anyway, Jono, I just want to say, in a dull, horrible, brutal world, Jono made the place brighter, funnier, friendlier, more charming, and just a nicer place to be. So thank you for that. I think if I had an epitaph the way I'm feeling, which is going to be in about 3 hours' time, it'll be, I hope he made the break. I just want to think, made the place a little bit brighter. Now, on to last night. Neither Phil nor I just want to put this into perspective, right, about the mental health attitude of this. Neither Phil nor I are big football fans. It's perfectly obvious. And we're not going to pretend like some people do every 4 years. Oh, I love football. What club you support? Oh, I wouldn't know. It's true. But, it would have been a nice boost for a country on its knees, economically and every other way. It would have been a lovely boost if we won, but we didn't win. Okay. All right. Now, here's the thing. The abuse that those kids, and I call them kids because they're younger than my twins. They're like 19 years old, right? The abuse that the black players got afterwards is disgusting. It's disgusting. And I don't know about you, Phil, because Phil and I haven't had a chance to chat this morning. But I think you pull away the very thin veneer over football, and what you see is what you dread you'd see. This ridiculous Neanderthal, shaven-headed, fat, stupid thug. It's appalling. It's appalling, and it's just left such a bitter taste in the mouth. No, I'm not a bleeding heart liberal. I'm not a tree hugger. You know, you've got to know Phil and I over the years. This is just shocking. The murals that Marcus Rashford had have all been defaced with revolting racial slurs. What does that achieve? What does that achieve? They did their best. Had they won, you see, what annoys me, Phil, is had they won,
they would have been heroes.
All of the players would have been the most marvelous people in the world. They did their best. They played their hearts out, right? They're the best of the best, and they lost. Okay. And now suddenly they're subject to disgusting abuse. It's really repulsive. It's so unnecessary. It's so negative.
Yeah. So here's
what a world. What a world.
Well, here's what I think. And I would suggest this is probably not going to be the most popular view, but it is how I feel. And ultimately, this is a station about saying how you feel.
It is, because it's about mental health and well-being. If you can't say how you feel, then you should be on Radio 1 listening to some child play some unintelligible bollocks that passes as music. Go on.
You and I have both discussed for a while about how the BLM movement is in real danger of setting back race relations a great number of years in this country. And I fear that it has done just that. Now,
it did.
In a million years, will I ever say someone deserves to be targeted because of their race, their background, their color of the skin, whatever it is? Of course, I don't think that. And furthermore, by the way, I don't think it, but I also believe it's a two-way street. And that's something I think often gets overlooked.
Say what you mean. Explain. I'm going to have to stand up. Jesus Christ. Go on.
I'll have to explain what I mean. I think more often than not, you see...
way to broadcast. I'm so sorry.
I think more often than not, people think it's acceptable somehow to be anti-white. And I find that
it's just a white privilege. I know.
Absolutely. So
it's just the default. It's the default crap that spews out of people's mouths.
I'm afraid white privilege is just a tree hugger's way of saying anti-white. You call it what you will, but anyway, I mean, whatever that is, that's not the issue here from last night, obviously. But I do worry that when they do things such as taking the knee at the beginning of a match. And you can bore me till you're blue in the face telling me the reason why they take the knee. I know why people think they take the knee. They think they know why they take the knee. But guarantee that...
Can I leap in for a second? And I'm so sorry to be standing up, everybody. I know it looks a bit weird, but just bear with me as either that or I'm going to be lying on the floor. What happens with this? It's a revolting, endless, and very vicious cycle. Because never mind my views. Taking the knee is contentious. All right? Put that to one side for a second, if you would, Phil. Of course, now that the Neanderthals came out of the woodwork, dragging their knuckles along the pavement and started racially abusing these kids, people are saying, well, now do you understand why they take the knee? So it feeds. The horrible thing is it feeds on itself. I remember there was a band a million years ago called Pop It Will Eat Itself, and I honestly think society will eat itself eventually. We'll come on to the comments in a sec. But you see what I'm saying, Phil? It's like they take the knee.
Yeah, but that's exactly.
And then they get abused. And then the people who support them say, "Now, do you see why they take the knee?" And it just goes on. It perpetuates.
I suppose I'm doing the same in reverse. I'm saying now, look, where taking the knee has got us. Because even though I know full well people are going to say, well, hang on a second, there were people beforehand who would openly racially abuse people online before the whole taking of the knee thing became popular, which is absolutely true. But the problem is what that does is it provokes people into doing things like that.
It is provocative. Whatever you think about it, it's provocative.
Think you're doing, by making a political statement like that, what you're actually doing is you're stoking the fire. There's just no other way around it. If you tell someone they are racist because of this, that, and the other, then the reverse psychology is that they're going to prove a point. They're going to say, fine, well, if you think I'm racist, well, here's this then. So make no mistake, in a million years, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I will never, ever support anyone being attacked, and not least of all because it's happened to me, by the way. But I will never support
That was
anyone.
when you missed the penalty against Poland.
Not quite. I will never
Brazil.
support anyone being attacked based on their race, the color of their skin, anything like that.
Bullshit.
But at the same time, I will also never support anything that I wholeheartedly believe encourages that sort of behavior. And that is what I've been banging on about for the past God knows how long. What I'm worried about with the ramifications of that sort of behavior.
Let's try and sit down again, shall we? Here's the thing. We're going to whip through some comments in a second. Hold your horses. It is inflammatory. The whole thing is just horrible, and it's divisive. And now people are taking. I was very surprised this morning on Twitter. There's a comedian that I follow. In fact, I've supported him. I've actually donated to him because his videos are brilliant. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want him getting abused. And he made some comments. He's very satirical and he plays a number of different characters. Very funny and very pinpoint accurate on catching the mood and showing much of what life is just ludicrous, you know. And he made some comments today, and I'm stunned he made them. I don't know why he made them. I'm shocked because they're not funny, and there's only one interpretation. There's only one interpretation. And I was shocked by it. I might write to him later. I don't know. I just don't want to stoke the flames. I just don't. And the other thing, there's a great thing. Right, let's just read. Shall we belt through some of these comments? Phil, would you be so kind? We'll start with Leo Green. Hi, Leo. Lovely, lovely man. If you don't know who Leo Green is, many of you will remember very fondly the wonderful broadcaster, musician Benny Green. He was one of my favorites. And Leo is his son and is a lovely guy. And Leo sometimes joins us for a cheeky cigar in Soho. He's a great guy, Leo. Talking about John O'Coleman. Would you like to read it out, Philip?
It says, met him a couple of times out and about, and he was always very genuinely interested in what I was up to and always very encouraging. And what a laugher he was as well. Yeah. Sorely missed. Hope you are well.
Oh, gee, Leo, great. Now, what is this from Chrissy Richards in Spain? 2:15. I don't understand this. What's this?
Oh, I suspect that's something to do with the ongoing saga surrounding her daughter. So we'll probably come back to that if that's okay, Chrissy. Sorry. Sam Monroe says the people abusing these kids would soon change if it was their own son. Oh, they'd be so proud. They'd been selected for England and happy enough to play and happy enough to spend their money following the trapping of success. Rashford and others have done so much for deprived kids and charities. Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. Okay, there you go. And these guys have done that and then some. There is no room for racism. Quite right.
This is the point. You know, it's so easy to make a cheap jibe saying, well, if you spent a little less time doing charitable work and more time practicing penalties. Oh, come on. That's just so shit. It's pathetic.
Silly as well, really.
What do you think the guys don't practice? Do you actually think they don't practice? Do you think the captain or whoever says, right, Fred Smith, you're taking, oh my God, I've never taken a penalty before. Well, now's your chance because it's only the final in front of millions and millions of people all over the world. And they go, all right, I'll give it a go. What's the worst going to happen? It doesn't work like that. These are professionals, for God's sake.
Paul Andrews says taking the knee was considered a bad idea at the start of the contest because of the BLM link.
Yeah.
But as it progressed, that dissipated. He then goes on to say the racism last night came from anger, as did wife beating and vandalism. Anger and not knowing where to let it out.
Well, this is all about mental health. This is why I wanted to discuss it with you, Phil. This is all about mental health. I was shocked to see so many messages of don't forget. Basically, well, I'm going to paraphrase it, and I'll put it crudely. I'm sorry. If your husband or boyfriend's going to beat the shit out of you tonight because the team lost, don't forget, here's the numbers of women's refugees. What a world. What a world. The fact you even have to put out a warning, Christ almighty, is this what we've become? It's a game of football.
Yes.
Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. You don't need to beat the crap out of somebody. It's shocking. It's just shocking.
Ed Grossman says, exactly, Russ. Phil, the abuse would be there anyway, which I think you'll find is what I said, Ed.
Yeah.
Taking the knee does not cause it. No, it provokes it, though. The big fault is social media. Absolutely. It's responsible for most abuse. I couldn't agree more. I think social media is...
They're not going around to these kids. They're not going around to these kids' houses and yelling through the letterbox, are they?
No,
they're shouting into their own little bell chamber.
Paul Claridge says the shocking behaviour of the so-called football fans is just utterly vile. The racism and the trashing of Marcus Rashford murals, as well as the trashing of Leicester Square before the games, heaps about the mentality of the scum minority. It even spilled over into another beloved radio presenter who both Russ and Phil know well, this morning receiving vile anonymous texts simply because she was brave enough to speak out against the racist scumbags. It's just not right. And it's got to a point where, sadly, that sort of behaviour no longer surprises me.
Now, this is, should we say who it is? I know who it is. It's a very good...
Petrie on Radio London.
It's Petrie. So Petrie Hoskin is a very good friend of Phil and myself. We're work colleagues and chums. Go to each other's homes and etc. And she spoke out apparently that it was not acceptable. She didn't want any racism on her show, etc. She's sitting in for the blonde woman, and she got piled on. Why? It's extraordinary.
Yeah, I do think.
Are these people like? See, I don't get it. Did I want them to win? Of course I wanted them to win. Has it changed my life? Not one iota. It would have been nice. It didn't happen. I've got other things to get on with. Got other things in the world that concern me.
I do worry that we have a dreadful attitude in this world, especially in this country, where we only deal with stuff at surface value. The truth is, whatever, and I know there's no excuse. Believe me, I know there's no excuse, but there are some people out there who don't know there is no excuse. And there is obviously something, whatever it is, that is causing people to behave like this. If you don't try and tackle that, then this is never going to go away. You can't just turn around to somebody and say, don't behave like that. Because guess what? They'll probably do it more. If there is a cause, then you need to find out what that root cause is. Look, don't get me wrong, if it's just because someone openly doesn't like somebody because they come from a certain background, well, there's very little you can do about that, short of actually sending them to where that person comes from and actually educating them on the history of that culture. But my point is, there is obviously a reason behind it. And I wholeheartedly believe that a massive part of that is the jibing that comes from the taking of the knee before the game. I will never excuse racism, but I say you've got to be very careful and mindful of the fact that there are some who will try and excuse it. And worse still, there are some who will react to what they believe is an excuse for it in the first place. In other words, they'll act on their feelings. Deal with that. Don't tell people you're wrong, because it just never works.
And talking about the violence, I want to give a mention to my fellow director on Women's Radio, Penny Horner, who's also a friend. Penny's working at the German Street Theatre, which she runs. And of course, the violence spilled out into German Street. People urinating all over the front step. What the hell? They're just disgusting. They're disgusting. Filthy.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. And she had a terrible time getting out of the theatre and a horrible journey home. And she's tough. Penny Horner is tough. And she was far from comfortable in what was going on because it was scary. It was scary. All right, let's read Ramsey's. Do you want to read it?
Got quite a long comment here, which I've got open on Facebook so I can see all of it. Ramsey says, I've been following racism in football for years. To blame taking the knee for causing this racism is blaming the victims. Not what I said, but whatever. I'll keep going. I'll respond to that in just a moment. He also says, would you blame a scantily clad woman for being sexually abused? Black players have had to endure monkey chants and name calling for years. Taking the knee is them saying enough is enough and not expressing support for the BLM organization. They distance themselves from that organization. Well, not quite, but anyway, rather than focus on taking the knee, we should be asking the government to arrest and sentence people who uses social media to abuse people based on the color of their skin. Exactly. And therein, exactly, Ramsey, where I couldn't agree with you more, is if there is a suitable punishment, this won't happen. But that's across all walks of life in this country and all different crimes. You look at the state of Leicester Square at the moment. Literally, the second someone is seen dropping litter, fine them £1,000. I promise you they won't do it again in a hurry. But the problem you've got is you've got a police...
Singapore.
The problem in Singapore. Police force that with the greatest amount of respect that you can possibly have for a police force like our one, especially in our great capital, is they seem more hell-bent on taking part in this nonsense rather than actually policing it and doing the work involved with it. And frankly, if you're going to have that level of law enforcing, well, then guess what? People are going to break the law. And as far as social media is concerned, the fact that they put profit over banning people who make so much as one error. Seriously, that's all it takes. One person to say something foul on social media, they should be barred for life. And believe me, it is doable. You can do that very easily by recognizing the IP address without boring you. The IP address is a unique series of numbers that locates where a computer is connected to a social media account, because it's exactly the same way when you try and connect to another country's television services. They say, sorry, you can't do that. It's not available in your country. They know where you are. Don't pretend they don't, because I promise.
Because they're lazy, and they put money before morals. And
they know exactly where you are. So they can very easily block it. Furthermore, if you're talking about someone who uses a mobile phone, well, guess what? All mobile phones are tagged. They've got what's called IMEI numbers, which is basically a number that is uniquely associated with that particular mobile device. It can be done. They put profit over trying to tackle this nonsense. So I completely agree with you, Ramsey. There needs to be a suitable punishment, but there also needs to be acknowledgement that people can be provoked into behaving what comes naturally to them, whether that is right or wrong. And of course, in this instance, it's wrong. No one will argue that, for sure. But exactly the same way that you say, would you blame someone who's scantily clad for being sexually abused? I wouldn't say that I blame them for being sexually abused, but I would also say, be very careful about what you do and where you go dressed like that. Sorry. But there's got to be some responsibility to everyone, to all of us, no matter what our behavior.
That is such a difficult thing, because every woman has the absolute right to dress as they want.
Totally.
And they should not be seen. If they want to dress in a sexy manner, that is down to them. That does not mean that they have a neon sign above their head saying, please abuse me, or, I'm a tart, or come and rape me because I'm dressed in this way.
Of course they don't.
It's
and
shocking.
Anyone in their right mind,
it is shocking, but there is a responsibility.
Anyone in their right mind would know that.
And there is, precisely. But you're not dealing with people in their right mind, are you?
There are people out there who are dangerous, who are lunatics, and who you have to be very aware of. In exactly the same way that, I'm sorry, but there are some parts of this country that I would not go and walk around openly identifying as Jewish, because I know full well that they would go to me, they'd go for me and attack me.
They would. Mainly in your case, it would be St. John's Wood and Golders Green Road, because the women would come out and say, my daughter would be perfect for you. And that would just drive you mad. That would just be horrible. You're absolutely right. I wouldn't go there. Sod it. I don't want to go to those places. And they don't want me there. They don't want you there. They don't want those people. What have we got? Stephen Marsh. Chrissy Richards. What has taking the knee got to do with football? Well, I think Ramsey's point has explained that, Chrissy. I don't want to beat this to death. I understand what you're saying, but I think we've covered it. Stephen Marsh, it is of course correct for the FA, the football clubs and decent human beings to call out racism such as that last night. But why do they apparently turn a blind eye when it's players as well? As in some of the crowd, yeah, well, here we go. So it's okay to walk on with the Palestinian flag. There you go.
Well, look, I mean, I suppose one does need to also realise, and I'm speaking as someone who is openly very pro-peace and understanding in that region, regardless of which side of the fence it comes from. And I recognise there are people from both sides of the fence that will wear the flags to show to the other side, look at us, we've got the louder voice. But I think what we should recognise as well is there are some people, especially people who listen to this programme, that flag probably means a great deal to them. But I can't deny that when you see people in a crowd, you know full well they're wearing it to provoke. They can't be possibly because there's no Palestinian team playing.
No, because they can't find a T-shirt with a swastika in it. That's why. Martin Allen, the BAME community over the last 107 years have put on the same uniform as the rest, fighting alongside non-BAME. Died. What is this? Non-BAME died alongside non. What you're saying is that everybody fought together, regardless of religion or creed or colour. That's Martin Allen's point. Paul Claridge. You know, the problem is, Paul, and Phil will read it out in a second, I don't like conflating two things. If I took it to I'm going to use a ridiculous example, so don't get annoyed, but I'm going to take it to the extreme to make my point. All right? And a lot of people won't like this, but bear with me. If you say, well, Jimmy Savile, he was an absolute monster. He probably molested 500 to 1,000 children. But he was great for charity. One has got nothing to do with the other. You can't conflate the two. You can't. So saying he missed a penalty last night, but let's remember many children didn't miss a meal yesterday. One has got nothing to do with the other. He had a job to do last night, which has got nothing to do with his wonderful charity work, nothing to do with his wonderful initiatives. That is a side issue. The job he was there to do was to play football. So it's not you can't use it as sort of as an excuse. It doesn't decry what he's achieved in the way of charity and school food. You know, I get absolutely furious when people said, there's a well-known YouTuber, well-known, not say who it is, and said, oh, Marcus Rashford, apparently when he was giving out free food, he missed his mouth with a fork. Well, that's just cheap. That's just cheap. It's not funny, it's cheap, and it's rude. But you're trying to conflate two completely different things. One, a wonderful initiative. Brilliant, superb, hats off to him, 100%. Two, you're there to play football. You're not doing both simultaneously at that particular moment.
Which is, by the way, going back to your argument before, when you were saying about those who are saying if he spent less time doing charity and not necessarily sort of practicing on the pitch or what have you, it's the two don't have anything to do with the other. You can't be on a practice pitch the whole freaking time, you know, the whole 24 hours or whatever it is. That's ridiculous.
Dave Sleet, who is a psychological brain box, says ignorance will always shout loudest. Well, it's true. Did Stuart Pearce have the same as Rashford? Of course not. Of course not. That's why I was so surprised when this very well-known comedian, who I follow, this morning said, I'm just saying that the white guy scored. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? Does it claim some moral superiority? I'm absolutely bemused by a comment like this. Is a highly intelligent guy. What the hell does that mean? What does it mean? And when you saw the faces of those kids coming back to mental health, those guys will need a lot of professional help. And I hope, I'm not a football pundit because it means very little to me, but I hope those kids, they're young, they're vulnerable. I hope they're getting the professional help that they will need. They will need serious counseling because they will feel that they've let the country down, they've let themselves down, they've let their teammates down, and they think everybody hates them. Well, they don't. It's a game of football, you know. It's just a thing.
Furthermore, one would never or should never underestimate the pressure when they are standing in front of that net and they know
Phil, can you imagine
unreal.
what's going through their head?
About millions of punters watching like a hawk, just hoping that they get a ball into the back of a net with someone standing in their way who will stop them from doing that. But the pressure that will be on them is immeasurable.
I couldn't do it. I was sitting watching. I'm so rubbish at the moment. Not even Ebony was with me. She's with her playmate because I can't really look after her at the moment. And I couldn't bear it. I was wandering around the room drinking single malt because I couldn't bear the pressure. I couldn't understand that sort of pressure. It's horrific. Absolutely horrific. And they were destroyed. And it was great to see that on the pitch, they were being hugged and you could see they were being comforted. And they needed it. They needed it. You know, if my youngest kids are now 23, the twins are 23. And if they were 19 and getting that kind of abuse and that kind of pressure, I'd be on the pitch myself, shoving my arms around them. Sarah Morgan, hello, Sarah. Saying just the white guys last night, come on, Rossi, come on, start again. Saying that just the white guy last scored, that's ignorance pure and simple. It is. Must make them think it's going to be clever. Yeah, I know. But this guy's a very witty, clever guy. I was just so surprised he did that. I'm really surprised. François Pascal, bonjour, ça va, oui? My heart bleeds for those guys. Yeah, they're going to have a rough time. It'll stay with them for many, many, many years, and they'll need help. And please, let's not have the argument. Oh, they're paid, 150,000 a week. They don't need help. Money is one thing. Mental health is another thing. Having a lot of money, you can still be messed up in your head. So let's not go down that avenue. I've read that they get and will get a lot of support, said Ed Grossman. Ed, I'm not going to answer your other question because where is it? He said, if they drape in the Palestinian flag, what's their crime exactly? Ed, that is provocative. I'm just not going to go there.
I'm sorry,
it's not going to go there, Ed.
It's a similar gesture as taking the knee. It's making a political point.
Just not going there.
It's making a political point in an event and an environment that is supposed to be apolitical. It's not necessary. You wear the flag of a country that if they are playing as a team, that's it. You don't need a flag at any other sport.
You know very well why. Ed, you're a smart man. You're a very clever man. You know why they're wearing the flag. You know exactly what it means, and you know what they feel. So let's not dance around this bullshit. Let's not. You're too clever for that, Ed. You're a very clever guy, and I admire you, and you're a very smart bloke. So you know, I'm just not going to rise to the bait. David Beckham, says Michael Verby in Spain. David Beckham experienced the same abuse. Well, he did because they got an effigy of David Beckham and hanged it outside of a pub. They got a dummy, make your own jokes up, dressed him in the Beckham shirt and everything, and hanged him. I mean, what is the matter with these people? Seriously. I always wonder. It's not that I don't like football. I like watching it. I like watching it, but I have a life. I have other things that interest me. So win or lose, I don't go into the depths of depression. Do these guys have nothing else going on? Is that it? I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe their lives, and I'm serious, maybe their lives are so horrible and they're so on the edge and they hate themselves. I don't know. That when this happens, it's a huge, like, emetic effect for them. Russ, no, I was replying to Stephen Marsh. That's an insult. It was a reply, not bait. I'm lost here. I'm completely
I don't
lost.
think it was an insult, Ed. You might have taken it as such, but I certainly don't think that's what was meant.
Being insulted.
Anyway, Martin Allen says white guy scores means racism has gone back 50 years. And that is why he refuses to watch football. He also says the team is the greatest we have produced in 55 years. We should be proud of these guys, not battering them. 3 Lions has no colour.
Well, do you know, it's like everything else in life. If you win, you're a hero, and if you lose, you're a failure. And life should not be like that. You know, what is it? Success has many fathers. Failure is an orphan. It's a very, very true saying. That
I would say, actually, though, that we do have to. I'm very aware that the attitude we have towards failure, especially in this country now, is so screwed up. When you get situations where people are rewarded for failing, you know, when you have sort of things like sort of children's sports days or what have you, you get prizes given out because you've lost. I'm afraid that I don't think that does much good for us either.
This is all Tony Blair's bullshit, because it sets you up on a completely wrong mindset. Because life isn't fair. I'd love it to be fair, but if anyone can tell you life isn't fair, hello. Life is not fair. You do not have an automatic right to be happy. You got to make your own happiness. And you got to make your own success. And life doesn't deal out equal hands. It just simply bloody doesn't. And it's very difficult when you've got kids who've been brought up to think that it does, and then they get into the real world when they're not in the primary school playing field anymore, running along in the beanbag race or whatever it is, and they get their first shock. It's brutal, because it's a rude awakening of how nasty life can be.
Paul Andrews says we need to find a way for people not to transfer their anger to violence, racism, and hate. Is there a country that escapes this issue? And what do they do better? Well, if I'm honest with you, Paul, I would say that the UK is in a very unique situation, because I don't believe there is another country anywhere else in the world that is as multicultural in such a concentrated area as the UK.
Because it's very small. It's a tiny country. It's tiny. We're tiny. It's a tiny little island. It's a tiny little island. I mean, don't forget, in South America, sometimes they go round, if the goalie's done bad, just shoot him dead. Seriously. You know, the family has to go into hiding. They come round and they shoot you. Unbelievable. Eve, why is he so angry?
No idea. It's part of his charm.
Anyway, is he so angry?
Anyway, that's one side. No time for petulance. Anyway, I would suggest, though, that if
why is angry?
No idea. I would suggest, though, that sort of we do need to sort of think very carefully about how we all view one another and behave towards one another. I feel that we are so dangerously soft in our attitude. All it is doing is teaching those who make the loudest noise that they're going to get heard first. And it's just wrong. It's so wrong. Seriously. Sometimes, as you say, Russ, things go our way in life. Sometimes they don't. And just get over it. It's as simple as that, because the alternative is you let it eat you up, and it makes you bitter. It makes you horrible. It makes you makes one a nasty person. We all have to go through our share of things that drive us mad and make us very unhappy. I will give a very simple, yet trivial by the scheme of things, example. I was not desperately happy with the outcome of the local elections for the London mayoral election. to say the least, wasn't desperately happy. I wholeheartedly believe that the incumbent is progressively destroying London. And I find that very sad to watch. But at the same time, it's out of my control. Nothing I can do about it. So I'm not going to let it eat me up. I'm not going to let it drive me insane. What's the point? It doesn't do anything. It makes me cross and it doesn't achieve a thing.
Changing the subject, it's so weird because my little dog's not here, and I keep hearing her. When you've used for 12 years to having your little mini schnauzer always, a couple of feet away, I keep hearing her walking around. Of course, she's not here. It's so weird.
Most people hear voices in their head, not paw prints.
Like I can hear her kind of snuffling around and just being there, and I keep talking to the bin. My classic was, not on this occasion, but on another occasion, I was busy talking to her. I realised it was a pile of my black T-shirts piled up on the bed. It wasn't my dog at all. Wow, that was when I wasn't on opioids. That's absolutely true. Sen Monroe, yeah. Paul Andrews says that was a betting thing. It was a betting thing in South America. And Sen Monroe left me a very nice message today. Sen, thank you. I did reply. That was very kind of you. Andres Escobar played for Colombia. He was shot for missing a penalty. And Jeremy Brannan, you'll never get rid of racism because there will always be idiots. Well, this is true. It's a question of education, isn't it? People are not born racist. They're not born hating one religion or another. They're not born hating one ethnic group or another. They are taught it.
Well, it's education. It's also punishment to fit the crime, frankly. If you were to actually sort of have a fitting punishment, to me, what makes perfect sense is you have so much as one individual who is caught performing some sort of racist act in a football ground, ban them for life. Seriously, what would be the harm in that, other than the stadium would be one person nicer, if you see what I mean? I know that's dreadful English, but you know what I mean.
100%.
I know that's terrible English, but you know what I mean. It would just be a better.
I get it. And after the game, I immediately texted my delightful and seriously lovely next door neighbor, who is Italian, and I congratulated him. And we had a nice little exchange of text messages, because that's the right thing to do. Dave Sleet says racism is the product of fear and ignorance. It's certainly the product of ignorance. I'm never understanding what the fear is. I hear what you're saying. What I'm saying is I'm not doubting what you're saying, Dave Sleet. I'm just don't understand what they're afraid of. It's often jealousy. I get that. Certainly ignorance. I get that. But I've never understood what they're afraid of.
Ramsey's also right. But if they use social media to spout their racism, they should be prosecuted totally. Anyone who uses that kind of platform, that kind of public forum to basically break the law, let's be honest, it wouldn't be tolerated allegedly wouldn't be tolerated anywhere else. So prove it. Do something about it, seriously. And as for these social media companies, I'm sorry, because I know it's a bit sort of hypocritical because we're using social media now to make this point.
Yeah.
If you are a social media tech giant who's got billions of dollars behind you, with some of the cleverest people in the world of technology working for you, don't beat about the bush. I was going to say something else there, which I won't say on air. Don't tell me it's raining when you're doing something else. Just get on with it. Sort it. You've got the capability. You absolutely could do something if you really wanted to. But the truth is they don't want to. They don't need to. Why would they spend the money on it? They don't need to spend the money because the product works for them now. The only way that it would truly have an impact is if people said, right, okay, this is clearly a platform for racists. I'm avoiding it. I'm not bothering with it anymore. But people won't.
No, they won't, because it's too ingrained in our DNA, and we are the living proof that we require it for our business model. This is the damn problem.
But at the same time, I would point out, if someone really wanted to do something about it, don't go around sort of kneeling on one knee to say, I stand against racism. If you are genuinely serious about trying to tackle it, then there is something you can do. You can avoid the places that require an audience so that it goes into a public forum. If you genuinely want it, not you.
You've lost me. I don't understand. I'm not following what you're saying here.
Okay. If an individual really was anti-racism, knowing full well that social media platforms are often used in that way, why do they still use them? If they know that those platforms are openly used for racist activity, why do they still use them? They don't care. They don't want to make a difference. Making a stupid gesture like getting down on one knee saying that you stand with somebody, great, well done. Now do something about it. Put your money where your mouth is. Of course you won't, though, because you don't care that much about it.
Here's the thing. I'm a pragmatist. I look at life and I try and take away the theoretical. I think, what does it really mean in real terms? Like everybody watching all over the world, they have real lives, they have real problems, they have real happiness, they have real sadness. We use, especially during this pandemic, for our mental health, if we had not had social media, it would have been infinitely worse during these lockdowns. It was our way of. No, you're pulling a face.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I agree if we
totally
didn't have
agree with that.
I'm saying if we didn't have some technology, absolutely it would be infinitely worse. But I don't know about social media, because there would be other ways.
We wanted the tech. Look, the truth of the matter is we've built up a family here, even though Ed Grossman is not speaking to me at the moment, it would appear. We've built up a family here through this medium. Some of you I've met, some of you I haven't met, same as Phil. But, there is an empathy, there's a warmth, there's a genuine feeling, and that has been generated through social. I've made many genuine friends, and I don't go looking for friends. I'm really pretty quiet, quite reclusive in real life. But I've made some wonderful, genuine friends through social media who are just delightful people. It can be a lovely, positive thing. But if you're a dark, horrible person, if your heart is, twisted, it can be a horrible place. Let's see what Ramsey says. Hopefully we can end on a positive note that for a month, Gareth Southgate and his team unified the country, true, and did a fantastic job. Absolutely true. I thought they were tremendous. We're now so confident about the prospects of the World Cup, we have a team to be proud of. I agree. They didn't cheat, they didn't resort to fouling or rough play, they can hold their heads high, but look at some of the fans. They trashed London, broke into Wembley. I don't know if you were aware of that. They basically ram-raided Wembley Stadium and abused Italian families. I mean, what in the name of God? What in the name of God? What? You couldn't find nicer people than Italians. Sorry. If I wasn't English, if I wasn't English or American, I'd love to be Italian.
You only have to ask the mafia that.
I love Italians. I love the country. I love the food. I love the cars, the beauty, the clothes, everything about it.
I
absolutely adore it. That I could, if I had to live somewhere, I could live in Italy. It's chaotic. That suits me.
Italian culture is very, very similar to what's known as Jewish culture. Really, it's very much about family and food, love and friendship, and it's very much at the heart of everything.
It is. It's true. It's been quite a heavy show today, but I think these issues are. I'm upset about John O'Coleman passing. I know you might think, well, when did you last see him? Well, he lives in Australia. What would you like me to do? But I'm upset about that. It makes you feel very mortal. You can go there, but for fortune. There we are. Here you go, Milne Hutchins. I'm perfectly honest. My life has not changed one bit if we'd won or lost. I was just enjoying the moment. Melanie, I'm with you. I used to go on a Saturday, because of the pandemic, I haven't been able to go for ages, to a cigar shop and have my cigars on a Saturday and hang out with my pals there. And everyone's from everywhere. My best pal in there is from the Yemen. and he and I are like great buds, and there's everyone from all over the world. And when you walk into this place, you leave all your preconceptions and all your political correctness and all your differences, you leave it out in the street, and you come in, and we're just men and women having a lovely time. And I've seen my best pal from the Yemen when he supports Arsenal, and they lost. I've never seen anybody get so furious. He went absolutely raving mad and stormed out. And I'm thinking, you storming out isn't going to change the result. It's a game of football.
But again,
unless you got £1 million riding on it.
But then again, this is a problem: is that too much emotional investment goes into football, and this actually you're now starting to see it as well in games such as tennis, which never used to be the case at all. You get people who are sitting in the crowds now absolutely screeching their heads off at the players, and you just think, for goodness sake, this never used to be like that. That's actually one of the reasons why I quite enjoyed watching tennis, is because it wasn't like that.
It's weird, isn't it? It is weird. And suddenly, you know, how can I put this? We were talking about the pressure of taking a penalty, the mental pressure, because we're a station about mental health. The mental pressure on that is the most defining moment of your life. You're never going to forget it. But people abusing, if a tennis player's having a problem, unless you're a professional tennis player or a coach, you don't know what they're going through. You've no idea. I don't understand this. Suddenly everybody's an expert. You're not an expert. You're there watching a match. Shut up. Enjoy the match. You know, you don't know what they're going through.
And you know what you can always tell? You can always tell a virologist when you see one, in especially on public transport. It's those who refuse to wear face masks, because they obviously know something that we don't.
Jeremy Brannon makes a very good point. And Jeremy, do you know what? I'm not going to pretend to be smart enough to answer it. Did it help to broadcast in the news straight away, or at all these idiots' comments? If we ignored them, would they go away? Well, you know the famous Margaret Thatcher phrase, "I'm not going to give them the oxygen of publicity." It is true. It is true. But the fact of the matter is, they said these dreadful things. So we could sweep it under the carpet, and the rest of us wouldn't know about it, or we could shine a spotlight on it and say, do you really think this is acceptable? This is what's going on. This is, you lift up the stone and this is what's crawling underneath. Jeremy, it's an excellent point. It's an excellent point. I wish I knew. Because social media, of course, does give a stadium to some people who are, I think, mentally ill.
Totally.
There are people on the BBC. You can't say that. I will say that. I think there are people making comments who are ill.
People have a sheep mentality. If they're lost with their own thoughts, they will just copy someone else's. And if it's at their disposal in the form of, say, social media or something like that, or even rolling news channels as well, if they see something and then they just say, okay, all right, well, that's how I think, then that's what the basis of their opinion is. And that is so dangerous and so stupid.
It's all right. So Ramsey says it's become socially unacceptable to smack kids in public or smoke indoors. True. It has. Of course it has. It should be socially unacceptable to express racist comments or comments abusing disabled. But how can you abuse disabled people? For God's sake. How sick do you have to be? How can you abuse someone who's disabled? What goes through your head? What kind of revolting person must you be? Oh, God. Hi, everyone. The show has flown by today, says Paul Carriage. Just wishing you all a fabulous day. I'll try. Do you know, I know I say this a lot, but Paul Claridge has a rough life. He has survived a very, very violent bout with cancer. He's come out of it smiling and strong. And his life is rough. And he has the most wonderful mental attitude, you know. Be more Paul Claridge. I mean it.
And that's the way to end today's show. Thank you very much indeed to everyone who's commented and joined in. As ever, it's been quite a feisty show today. Thank you very much indeed. I guess all that's left to do is to say that we will be back on
Wednesday
at midday. See you then.
See you then. Bye-bye.